Frozen frontier revealed. At the bottom of our planet lies a realm of ice so vast, so dazzling, that it appears almost otherworldly. Antarctica, stretching across 14 million square kilometers, is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on Earth. From space, it looks like a great white shield, reflecting sunlight back into the cosmos, a stark contrast to the blue oceans and green continents that surround it. For much of human history, this frozen landmass was unknown, concealed by treacherous seas and cloaked in legend. When we picture Antarctica today, we imagine endless plains of ice, colossal glaciers grinding forward like frozen rivers, and mountains buried under sheets of snow kilometers thick. Yet the great mystery of this place lies not only on its surface, but deep beneath it, where scientists believe a hidden world of mountains, valleys, rivers, and perhaps even ancient secrets remain sealed away. Mainstream science tells us that Antarctica is far from lifeless. Colonies of emperor penguins huddle in the brutal cold, seals lounge on drifting ice, and microscopic organisms thrive in sub-zero brine. Beneath the ice, freshwater lakes such as Lake Vostok have been cut off from the surface for millions of years, forming ecosystems that may harbour species entirely unknown to science. But there is also a shadow to this story, a lingering sense that the frozen continent guards more than just microbial life and fossilized remains. For every discovery that sheds light on its past, another question emerges, hinting at the possibility that Antarctica conceals a chapter of Earth's history still beyond our grasp. The earliest explorers who braved the southern oceans could scarcely imagine what truly lay hidden there. They described a land of icebergs taller than cathedrals, storms that could rip sails from masts, and seas where compasses spun erratically. Many return, aired with tales of hardship, while others never returned at all. Even today, when satellites sweep overhead and GPS tracks our every movement, vast regions of Antarctica remain virtually uncharted. The sheer thickness of the ice, up to 5 kilometers in some areas, acts as a shield, concealing mountains taller than the Alps and valleys that dwarf the Grand Canyon. Among fringe thinkers, Antarctica has long been cast as more than just a frozen wilderness. Some claim that beneath its icy crust lie the remnants of a forgotten civilization, perhaps Atlantis itself, locked away under glaciers at the close of the last ice age. Others whisper about military secrets, alien bases, or lost technologies hidden by governments under the guise of international treaties. Scholars, however, remain cautious, reminding us that while such tales captivate the imagination, evidence remains elusive. Still, they concede much of the continent is so inaccessible that real surprises may yet await. Scholars still debate whether our fascination with Antarctica stems from its genuine mysteries or from the human need to project myths onto places we cannot fully grasp. What is certain is that Antarctica is more than a frozen wasteland. It is both a scientific treasure chest and a blank canvas onto which we paint our deepest fears and fantasies. And as we journey deeper into its story, we begin to sense why this land of ice has been at the centre of so many whispered cover-ups, half-truths and legends. First, human whispers. Long before any ship reached the southern ice, humanity dreamed it into existence. The idea of a vast southern land, terra australis incognita, haunted maps for centuries. Classical thinkers like Aristotle and Ptolemy reasoned that a great landmass must exist in the south to balance the known continents of the north, keeping the earth in equilibrium. By the Middle Ages, European cartographers inked sprawling outlines of a southern continent across their charts, a place of speculation rather than knowledge. It became a canvas of imagination, filled with mythical riches, exotic beasts, and the promise of unexplored dominion. One curious artifact of this imagined world is the Orontius Phineus map of 1531. The map depicts a massive southern continent with surprising detail, including rivers and mountain ranges. Mainstream historians argue that the cartographer merely combined rumours and errors, stretching South America across the page and fusing it with legends. Yet fringe researchers have suggested something stranger, that the map might represent Antarctica before it was buried beneath ice, as if drawn from forgotten ancient knowledge. Scholars still debate whether such maps are fanciful guesswork or echoes of something older that modern science has yet to uncover. The whispers of a southern land resonated beyond Europe as well. Polynesian navigators, masters of the Pacific, carried oral traditions of journeys into colder waters where white horizons awaited. While not definitive evidence, these tales suggest humanity's curiosity about the southern world may have been older and wider than European imagination alone. Even the Maori of New Zealand speak of voyages southward, with some researchers proposing that Polynesians may have reached the Antarctic waters long before Europeans dared. Yet it was not until the age of exploration that the whispers began to solidify. Portuguese and Spanish sailors, pushing ever further into uncharted seas, noted strange currents, immense flocks of seabirds, and icebergs adrift in southern waters. These signs hinted at something vast lying beyond, but the full truth remained out of reach. In 1603, Dutch navigator Dirk Gerrits reported glimpsing icy coasts after storms carried him far south of Cape Horn. His account was never confirmed, but it planted seeds of possibility. The myth of Terra Australis shaped not just maps, but geopolitics. Explorers risked everything in the hope of claiming this phantom land for crowns and empires, lured by visions of gold, fertile soil, and trade routes. Yet, ironically, what lay waiting was a continent so hostile to human survival that even today, permanent settlement is impossible without technology. The ancient whispers of abundance would clash with the harsh reality of a frozen desert. Still, the persistence of the myth reveals something deeper about us. We are drawn to the unknown, compelled to imagine worlds just beyond the horizon. Whether in the form of medieval maps, Polynesian legends, or Renaissance dreams, Antarctica existed in human thought long before anyone laid eyes on it. Scholars still debate whether these whispers are nothing more than creative speculation or subtle hints that fragments of deep forgotten history survived in myths. In either case, the imagined continent was a powerful presence in our collective mind, long before the sails of real explorers caught the southern winds. Captain Cook's ice barrier. By the 18th century, the whispers of Terra Australis had hardened into obsession. European empires, swollen with ambition, wanted proof that the southern continent was real, and theirs to claim. The task of solving this centuries-old riddle fell to one of history's greatest navigators, Captain James Cook. Between 1772 and 1775, Cook embarked on his second great voyage, commanding HMS Resolution and HMS Adventure, determined to push farther south than any sailor before him. His mission was as much political as scientific. Britain sought to outpace its rivals, staking claim to any land that might expand its global reach. Cook sailed into latitudes where maps faded to blank parchment. His journals describe seas littered with icebergs that loomed like floating castles, their blue shadows stretching across frigid waves. On January 17, 1773, he became the first recorded sailor to cross the Antarctic Circle. He did not find Terra Australis as legends had promised. Instead, he discovered a world of endless ice, a frozen barrier too formidable to breach. His ships pushed against pack ice that stretched to the horizon, grinding and colliding with thunderous cracks. The Great Ice Wall, as Cook described it, convinced him that no habitable southern continent existed. Yet the voyage was not without paradox. Though Cook concluded that the icy south was uninhabitable, his expeditions collected data that hinted at something larger. They noted strong currents and vast colonies of seabirds, signs of nearby land that remained tantalizingly out of reach. Cook himself admitted in his logs that a continent might exist further south, hidden beneath the ice, though of no value to empires seeking wealth or settlement. Scholars still debate whether his failure to sight land was a simple matter of geography, or whether shifting ice floes concealed Antarctica from view, hiding its true form just beyond the horizon. In fringe retellings, Cook's voyage takes on a conspiratorial glow. Some argue he glimpsed more than he revealed, that his terse descriptions of icy mountains rising above the horizon were veiled references to land sightings deliberately downplayed. His route, they note, passed within 150 miles of the Antarctic mainland on several occasions, close enough that a clear day might have offered a glimpse of the continent. Did Cook truly miss Antarctica, or did he obscure what he saw to keep knowledge confined to imperial powers? Regardless, the voyage changed the story of the South forever. The dream of a fertile terra australis crumbled, replaced by an image of Antarctica as a wasteland of ice and wind. Cook's sailors, frostbitten and weary, described the Antarctic seas as among the most hostile environments on Earth, a place where survival was measured in minutes should one fall overboard. "I make bold to declare," Cook wrote, "that the world will derive no benefit from it." And yet, history would prove him wrong. Though Cook dismissed the continent as barren and useless, Antarctica would later yield priceless scientific insights, from the secrets of past climates to clues about life beyond Earth. Scholars still debate whether Cook's pessimism reflected genuine conviction or a strategic attempt to dissuade rival empires. What is certain is that his ice barrier became an enduring symbol marking the edge of the known world, a white frontier that would tempt explorers for generations to come. The heroic age dawns. If Cook's expeditions marked the beginning of doubt, the closing years of the 19th century kindled a new fire, a determination to conquer the ice no matter the cost. What followed came to be called the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, a 30-year span between the 1890s and the 1920s, when daring adventurers turned Antarctica from a distant rumour into a stage of human drama. Here, bravery and tragedy blended so seamlessly that their stories are retold like epic sagas. The first great figure was Carsten Borchgrevink, a Norwegian who, in 1899, led the Southern Cross expedition. His team became the first to winter on the Antarctic mainland, huddled in crude huts while gales battered their camp. Their survival proved that human beings could endure the long polar night, an achievement both celebrated and grim. From this tenuous foothold, others pressed farther. Robert Falcon Scott, a Royal Navy officer, became a household name with his Discovery expedition of 1901-1904, followed later by the ill-fated Terra Nova journey. Scott dreamed not only of scientific achievement, but also of national pride, determined that Britain should plant its flag at the South Pole. Yet destiny was cruel. When Scott finally reached the pole in January 1912, he found a Norwegian flag already fluttering in the icy wind. Roald Amundsen, his rival, had beaten him there by just over a month. Crushed, Scott and his party began their return trek, only to perish one by one, their frozen bodies later discovered with journals that immortalized their suffering. Amundsen, by contrast, became a legend for his precision and pragmatism. His 1911 expedition used dog teams, lighter equipment, and ruthless efficiency to reach the pole first. While Scott embodied tragic nobility, Amundsen symbolized cold determination. Their parallel stories defined an era, illustrating both the triumph and the futility of human ambition against the Antarctic wilderness. Scholars still debate whether Scott's failure was inevitable due to poor planning, or whether sheer misfortune sealed his fate. And then came Ernest Shackleton, the man whose legend eclipsed even Scott's. Shackleton's endurance expedition of 1914 remains one of the greatest survival stories ever told. When his ship was crushed by sea ice in the Weddell Sea, Shackleton led his men on an extraordinary odyssey, camping on drifting ice, sailing open boats through lethal seas, and ultimately securing rescue without a single life lost. Shackleton never reached the pole, yet his refusal to abandon hope turned failure into immortality. These explorers brought back more than tales of hardship. They charted coastlines, collected fossils, and proved that Antarctica was indeed a continent, not just scattered islands under ice. Among their findings were remnants of ancient plants, suggesting that the frozen desert had once been lush and green, perhaps millions of years ago. For mainstream science, this was a breakthrough. For fringe theorists, it was fuel for speculation. Might Antarctica's ice conceal not just fossils, but traces of civilizations erased by time? The heroic age left scars as well as triumphs. Graves and memorials dot the icy coastlines, monuments to lives spent chasing a dream. Yet those sacrifices fixed Antarctica in the global imagination. It was no longer terra australis incognita, a blank space on maps. It had become a theatre of human courage and fragility, a reminder that the greatest battles are often fought not against enemies, but against nature itself. Scholars still debate whether the allure of Antarctica during this period was scientific curiosity or the sheer thrill of testing human limits. Whatever the motive, the heroic age set the stage for an even stranger chapter to come, when airplanes, politics, and rumours of secrets transformed Antarctica from an explorer's dream into a mystery of global proportions. The bird expeditions. The dawn of the 20th century had been written in frostbite and heroism, but as decades turned, a new kind of exploration replaced sledges and sails, the machine age. Suddenly, Antarctica was no longer just the domain of weary men dragging supplies across ice. With airplanes, radios, and cameras, a new chapter unfolded, one led by a towering figure in polar history, Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd of the United States Navy. Byrd's first expedition, launched in 1928, was a spectacle of ambition. Unlike the lean, desperate journeys of Scott or Shackleton, Byrd's operation was a floating city. Ships carried tractors, aircraft, prefabricated buildings, and a team of over 40 men to establish Little America, a base on the Ross Ice Shelf. For the first time, Antarctica became a hub of modern logistics. More strikingly, Byrd embraced the skies. On November 29, 1929, he and 3 companions took off in a Ford trimotor airplane, soaring over the vast white wilderness. After a grueling 19-hour flight, Byrd claimed to have flown over the South Pole itself, an accomplishment that electrified newspapers and cemented his status as an American hero. Mainstream historians regard Byrd's achievements as transformative. His expeditions mapped vast regions of the continent, collected meteorological data, and tested the endurance of both men and machines in the harshest conditions. Byrd's meticulous records gave scientists invaluable insight into the icy frontier. But alongside his legitimate triumphs, whispers began to spread, rumours of things seen but not recorded, of landscapes hidden beneath the ice. Some of his own writings, laced with poetic wonder, fed these interpretations. The second Byrd expedition in 1934 only deepened the aura of mystery. Byrd famously spent 5 months alone in a remote hut, conducting weather observations through the polar night. When he was finally rescued, he was emaciated and ill, later admitting he had nearly died from carbon monoxide poisoning. In the silence and isolation, he claimed to have had visions, moments of profound insight that his critics dismissed as hallucinations. Fringe theorists, however, seized upon these months of solitude, suggesting he had encountered something extraordinary, knowledge he could never fully reveal. His third and fourth expeditions, through the late 1930s and into the post-war era, embraced ever more advanced technology, from aerial mapping to ice-penetrating soundings. Here lies one of the strangest twists. Some of the maps created during Byrd's time revealed anomalies, mountain ranges buried beneath ice, and geological features that seemed inconsistent with prior understanding. While science celebrated these findings as breakthroughs, alternative writers began claiming they hinted at something more: hidden bases, ancient ruins, or even evidence of life shielded by the glaciers. Scholars still debate whether Byrd's discoveries have been overinterpreted by conspiracy enthusiasts, or whether his work left genuine gaps that invite suspicion. Yet what cannot be doubted is Byrd's symbolic role. He transformed Antarctica from the last theatre of heroism into a landscape of secrets waiting to be uncovered. No longer was the continent a simple test of endurance. It had become a puzzle, with aerial photographs capturing glimpses of what had been invisible for millennia. In his later years, Byrd often spoke of Antarctica as a land of immense strategic importance, the world's last great adventure. To some, these words sounded like the pragmatic musings of a military man. To others, they were hints of hidden truths, a warning that Antarctica was more than just ice and penguins. Scholars still debate whether Byrd was simply a visionary explorer or an unwilling messenger of mysteries too vast to acknowledge. What is clear is that his expeditions laid the foundation for everything that followed: science, politics, and conspiracy alike. Byrd opened the skies above Antarctica, and with them the curtain lifted just enough to reveal that beneath the ice the story was only beginning. Operation Highjump. If Byrd's interwar expeditions revealed Antarctica as a land of promise, the events of 1946 and 1947 etched it forever into the mythology of secrecy. Operation Highjump, officially known as the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, was the largest Antarctic expedition ever launched. Commanded by Admiral Richard Byrd himself, it deployed an armada, 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and over 4,000 men. Its official purpose was straightforward: train personnel, test equipment in polar conditions, and consolidate America's presence on the icy continent. But the sheer scale of the mission, coming so soon after World War II, sparked rumours that its true aim was far more unusual. For months the fleet roamed the frozen seas. Aircraft flew mapping missions over vast stretches of ice, taking aerial photographs at a rate never before seen. Naval task forces practiced landings, built temporary camps, and tested vehicles. Mainstream history views Highjump as a practical operation, part scientific research, part Cold War rehearsal, ensuring that the US could operate in extreme conditions should geopolitical rivalry expand to the poles. Indeed, by the late 1940s, the Arctic and Antarctic alike were seen as strategic theatres in an emerging nuclear age. Yet from the moment the operation ended, whispers of another story took hold. The mission was originally slated to last 8 months, but it was abruptly cut short after just 2. Several aircraft were lost, and men were killed in accidents that were never fully explained. In conspiracy circles, this vacuum of detail became fertile ground. Some claimed that Byrd's forces encountered mysterious craft near the ice, engaged in a brief but violent conflict, and were forced to withdraw. Theories blossomed, ranging from secret Nazi bases hidden beneath the ice to encounters with technologies beyond human understanding. One oft-repeated tale comes from an alleged interview with Byrd, published in a Chilean newspaper in 1947, in which he supposedly warned of a new enemy capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Scholars still debate whether the article was misquoted, mistranslated, or even fabricated. Mainstream accounts insist that Byrd's comments, if authentic, likely referred to the strategic importance of air power in the nuclear age, not extraterrestrial fleets. Yet the ambiguity was enough to cement Highjump in the annals of fringe history. Another layer of intrigue comes from timing. The operation coincided with the early years of the UFO phenomenon in America. Sightings were becoming cultural fixtures, and the secrecy surrounding military activities only deepened suspicion. Highjump's abrupt end, coupled with Byrd's cryptic remarks, provided all the ingredients for decades of speculation. In this telling, the icy continent became more than a wilderness. It was a stage where hidden powers clashed, unseen by the rest of the world. From a sober perspective, Operation Highjump advanced polar science. It produced thousands of photographs that improved maps of Antarctica, revealed new mountain ranges, and provided data for weather and navigation. But even here, shadows linger. Some images and reports remain classified, locked in archives. Scholars still debate whether this is routine military secrecy or evidence of something deliberately withheld. Operation Highjump marked a turning point. No longer was Antarctica only the domain of explorers and scientists. It had become entangled in geopolitics, secrecy, and legend. Whether one sees it as a monumental training exercise or a veiled battle against unknown forces, its legacy remains the same. Antarctica had crossed the threshold from frontier to enigma. The ice no longer symbolized purity. It symbolized silence, a silence that many believe conceals truths too dangerous or too extraordinary to reveal. The Nazi base myth. Of all the stories entwined with Antarctica, none is stranger or more persistent than the tale of Nazi strongholds buried beneath the ice. The myth begins with a kernel of fact. In 1938, just before the outbreak of World War II, Germany launched the Neuschwabenland expedition. Led by Captain Alfred Richer, the mission was officially intended to scout whaling grounds and secure a potential base for German industry. The expedition mapped some 600,000 square kilometers of Antarctica, dropping thousands of metal swastika-embossed markers from aircraft to stake symbolic claims. Photographs from the journey show planes soaring over jagged peaks and icy plains, the German flag planted in the snow. Mainstream historians generally regard the venture as limited in scope. Richer's team erected a few temporary shelters and carried out aerial photography, but they never established a permanent base. When war erupted in Europe, Germany shifted focus entirely to battlefronts closer to home. Yet the very idea of Nazi flags planted in the frozen south took on a life of its own. In the post-war years, whispers began to circulate that the expedition was merely a cover, and that deep within the ice the Reich had constructed bunkers, laboratories, and perhaps even escape routes for fleeing leaders. These rumours grew wilder in the 1950s as Cold War paranoia and UFO culture intertwined. Stories emerged of Base 211, a supposed subterranean fortress beneath the mountains of Queen Maud Land. According to these tales, advanced Nazi technology, including flying discs, was tested there, and after 1945 some of Hitler's most loyal followers retreated south, continuing their work in secrecy. One version even claims that the infamous Schutzstaffel SS found refuge under the glaciers, waiting for a Fourth Reich to rise. Scholars still debate why such legends endure. On one hand, Antarctica's remoteness and inaccessibility provide the perfect stage for speculation. On the other, fragments of truth, like the confirmed German expedition, lend a shadow of plausibility. Add to this the genuine secrecy surrounding post-war military missions such as Operation Highjump, and a fertile ground for conspiracy takes root. In fringe accounts, Nazi Antarctica is often linked to other mysteries, sightings of unidentified craft in polar skies, secret submarine routes through under-ice caverns, even rumoured alliances with otherworldly beings. The story stretches credibility, but it thrives precisely because so much of Antarctica remains unseen. Who can say it isn't there, becomes the refrain of believers. Meanwhile, scientists point to mundane explanations. Ice-penetrating radar surveys reveal no bunkers, no tunnels, only bedrock and compressed snow. Expeditions to Queen Maud Land have found nothing but mountains buried in ice. Yet, even here, mainstream findings can fuel speculation. When scientists discovered subglacial lakes and strange magnetic anomalies in the same region, conspiracy theorists quickly grafted these onto the Nazi myth, claiming that the anomalies were remnants of underground complexes. Whether taken as fact, fable, or something in between, the Nazi base story is more than just a curiosity. It reflects how Antarctica has come to symbolize the unseen. It is the perfect canvas upon which to project fears of secret technologies, hidden enemies, and histories rewritten. Scholars still debate whether the endurance of the myth reveals hidden truths or simply the human desire to fill blank spaces with stories. But whatever the case, the legend of Nazi Antarctica remains frozen in cultural memory, as enduring as the ice itself. The Antarctic Treaty. By the late 1950s, Antarctica had become more than a scientific frontier. It was a political powder keg. Nations from across the globe were sending expeditions, planting flags, and hinting at territorial claims. Britain, Argentina, and Chile all quarrelled over overlapping sectors. The United States and Soviet Union, now locked in the Cold War, eyed Antarctica's strategic position. Some feared the icy continent might become a new theatre for military bases, nuclear testing, or covert intelligence gathering. And then, in 1957-58, the International Geophysical Year changed everything. Scientists from 12 nations worked side by side, establishing permanent stations, drilling ice cores, and sharing discoveries. For a brief moment, science overshadowed rivalry. The outcome was unprecedented. In 1959, those same 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty in Washington, D.C., creating one of the most unusual agreements in human history. It declared that the continent would be used exclusively for peaceful purposes. Military activity was banned, nuclear testing and radioactive waste disposal were forbidden. Territorial claims were frozen, literally and legally. Antarctica became the only place on Earth where geopolitics was deliberately paused, a shared commons for science. When the treaty entered into force in 1961, it marked a milestone in cooperation. Today, it has grown to include over 50 signatory countries. On the surface, the treaty seems like a triumph of reason. Yet, precisely because of its unusual nature, it has fueled decades of suspicion. Why would rival superpowers suddenly agree to demilitarize such a vast territory? Why the insistence on banning not just weapons, but even nuclear waste storage? To some it seems almost too good to be true. In conspiracy lore, the Antarctic Treaty is portrayed not as altruism, but as cover. The story goes, nations know something extraordinary lies beneath the ice, whether ancient ruins, alien presence, or lost technologies, and the treaty is a way to keep it hidden under the guise of peace. Even mainstream historians admit that secrecy lingers. Military personnel are technically present at Antarctic stations, though officially in support of science. Satellites watch the continent from above, and governments still classify certain data. When rare accidents occur, like aircraft crashes or sudden evacuations, the details often remain murky. Scholars still debate whether this is ordinary bureaucratic opacity or a deliberate policy of silence. Meanwhile, ordinary people are forbidden from venturing freely. Tourism exists, yes, but tightly controlled. No one may set up permanent homes or private enterprises on the continent. To many, this only deepens the mystery. The very fact that Antarctica is protected so fiercely suggests that something precious, or perhaps perilous, lies beneath. Still, the treaty's practical impact cannot be overstated. It preserved Antarctica as a natural laboratory, giving scientists uninterrupted access to study climate, geology, and biology. Thanks to this, discoveries like subglacial lakes, ancient ice cores, and microbial life in extreme environments have been made without the noise of geopolitical rivalry. The treaty remains one of humanity's rarest feats, a collective vow to keep a continent dedicated not to conquest, but to knowledge. And yet, the silence it imposes lingers. Scholars still debate whether the Antarctic Treaty is a model of enlightened cooperation, or a carefully constructed curtain shielding the world from secrets frozen under the ice. Mapping anomalies. For centuries, maps have carried mysteries. Some tell us more about the mapmaker's imaginations than the world itself, yet others contain details that seem to defy explanation. Antarctica is no exception. Among the most famous of these puzzles is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral of the same name. On its tattered parchment, Piri depicted the coasts of Africa, Europe, and South America with surprising accuracy for the time. But what draws attention is the lower portion of the map, which some claim shows the northern coastline of Antarctica, centuries before its official discovery. Mainstream historians argue that this is a misinterpretation. To them, the supposed Antarctic coast is simply South America, distorted by copying errors. The cartographer, after all, worked from a patchwork of older sources, blending Arabic, Portuguese, and even legendary accounts. Yet fringe researchers point out something odd. The coastline drawn resembles not the ice-covered land of today, but Antarctica as it might look without ice, with inlets and rivers aligning eerily with modern seismic surveys. Could Piri Reis, or his mysterious sources, have had access to ancient maps of an ice-free south? The Piri Reis map is not alone. Other Renaissance and medieval charts, such as the Orontius Phineus and Buache maps, also appear to show southern landmasses where none were yet known. Orontius Phineus's 1531 world map sketches a continent at the South Pole, complete with rivers and mountain ranges. Philippe Buache's 1737 map divides an Antarctic-like landmass into two large islands separated by a strait, an uncanny match to what scientists would later confirm about Antarctica's subglacial structure. Scholars still debate whether these coincidences are simply products of imagination, cartographic errors, or evidence of knowledge carried across ages. Could Nantes seafarers, long forgotten, have charted parts of Antarctica during warmer periods when the ice retreated, or is it our modern tendency to project patterns onto maps, seeing precision where there is none? What fuels the intrigue is that mainstream discoveries sometimes echo the old charts. For example, the Buache map's depiction of a divided Antarctica predates modern radar surveys that confirmed its ice sheet conceals two main land masses separated by deep basins. While geographers chalk this up to chance, alternative historians view it as validation that hidden knowledge once existed, passed down through lost civilizations. Even modern mapping of Antarctica adds to the enigma. Satellite images sometimes reveal geometric shapes, sharp lines, pyramid-like peaks, and shadows that suggest artificial structures. Geologists explain these as natural formations, nunataks, mountain peaks poking through ice, or digital artifacts. But in the realm of speculation, such images become evidence of pyramids in Antarctica, alleged remnants of civilizations entombed under ice. The mystery of maps, whether ancient or digital, lies not in what they prove, but in what they suggest. They remind us that Antarctica is both a place and a symbol, a land where fact and imagination overlap. Scholars still debate whether cartographic anomalies are windows into deep prehistory or mirrors reflecting our desire for hidden truths. What is certain is that the blank spaces at the edges of maps, whether in the 16th century or the satellite age, invite us to fill them with stories. And nowhere on Earth has more blank space than the frozen continent at the bottom of the world, mountains beneath the ice, When explorers first gazed upon Antarctica's endless plains of snow, few imagined mountains might rise unseen beneath the ice. And yet in 1958, scientists, working during the International Geophysical Year, stumbled upon one of the continent's most astonishing secrets, a massive hidden mountain range buried entirely under kilometers of ice. Using seismic soundings, Soviet and British researchers revealed the existence of the Gamburtsev Mountains, stretching over 1,200 kilometers with peaks as tall as the Alps. Mainstream geologists were baffled. How could such towering mountains remain preserved beneath a sheet of ice millions of years old? Unlike the jagged, exposed ranges of the Andes or Himalayas, the Gamburtsevs were entombed in silence, protected from erosion by their frozen shroud. Scientists proposed that the mountains had formed around 1 billion years ago during ancient tectonic collisions, later rejuvenated by glacial activity. Yet many questions linger. If the ice has covered them for at least 34 million years, since Antarctica froze over, why do they still appear sharp, not weathered into stumps like other ancient ranges? The discovery reverberated beyond geology. Suddenly, Antarctica was not just a blank desert of ice, but a continent with a hidden landscape, valleys and peaks preserved like a ghost of Earth's past. The Gamburtsevs suggested that entire ecosystems, rivers or even lakes could lie locked away below, sealed off since before humanity existed. Some scientists began to speculate whether microbial life or even complex organisms might still dwell in these deep, ice-buried basins. Fringe theorists naturally took the story further. To them, the Gamburtsevs were not simply mountains but potential hiding places. Rumours spread that radar surveys revealed geometric structures, suggesting that ancient civilizations, or PRAPs, something not of this earth, once used the mountains as a foundation for hidden bases. Others suggested that legends of Atlantis or lost polar kingdoms were rooted in truths, preserved under Antarctic ice rather than swallowed by the sea. Scholars still debate whether the Gamburtsev discovery points only to geological mystery or to broader implications about our planet's history. What is certain is that even now, the range remains largely unexplored. No human eyes have seen its valleys directly. Our knowledge comes only from radar echoes and seismic vibrations. It stands as a reminder that the vast majority of Antarctica's interior remains hidden, not just from ordinary travellers, but from science itself. Modern technology has peeled back some layers. Ice-penetrating radar and satellite mapping have revealed a continent carved with deep canyons and mountain chains. Beneath East Antarctica, the Denman Canyon plunges deeper than the Grand Canyon, hidden beneath 3 kilometers of ice. Such findings reinforce a simple truth. Antarctica is not flat and barren, but a dramatic, complex landscape entombed. The Gamburtsevs, however, remain the most iconic of these buried wonders. Their very existence challenges assumptions about how landscapes evolve under ice. Are they a frozen relic of Earth's deep past, or evidence of processes we still do not understand? Scholars still debate whether their sharp peaks reflect unique geological preservation or something stranger entirely. Either way, the discovery transformed Antarctica in the human imagination. No longer merely an empty sheet of white, it became a layered mystery, a world above and another world below, both demanding exploration. And just as explorers once risked everything to cross the ice, modern scientists now probe the frozen depths, convinced that beneath the mountains and valleys lie answers not only about Antarctica but about Earth itself. Lakes sealed for eons. If hidden mountains startled scientists, what came next was even more astonishing. Entire lakes, sealed beneath the ice for millions of years, cut off from the surface world since long before human civilization arose. The most famous of these is Lake Vostok, discovered in the 1990s beneath nearly 4 kilometers of East Antarctic ice. Larger than Lake Ontario, stretching some 250 kilometres in length, it is a vast body of liquid water lying in complete darkness, warmed by geothermal heat and kept from freezing by the immense pressure above. Mainstream science regards Lake Vostok as one of the most pristine environments on Earth, a place where evolution may have taken its own path in isolation. Microbes found in core samples hint that life has persisted there despite the crushing conditions. For astrobiologists, such discoveries are thrilling. If organisms can thrive in Vostok's sealed abyss, perhaps they could exist beneath the icy crusts of Europa or Enceladus, moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Antarctica, in this sense, becomes a model not just of Earth's past, but of alien oceans across the cosmos. Yet the intrigue does not stop at science. The secrecy surrounding Lake Vostok's exploration has fueled decades of speculation. In 2012, Russian scientists finally drilled into the lake after years of preparation. Soon after, the team went quiet. Officially, drilling was paused to prevent contamination, but conspiracy theories flourished. Rumours swirled that researchers had discovered strange, complex organisms. Some even claimed a prehistoric squid-like creature was encountered before communications were abruptly shut down. No credible evidence supports these tales, yet they persist, feeding the sense that something is being withheld, and Lake Vostok is only one among hundreds. Scientists have identified more than 400 subglacial lakes across Antarctica, linked by hidden rivers flowing beneath the ice sheet. Some, like Lake Whillans, have been sampled successfully, revealing microbial communities that had survived in isolation for hundreds of thousands of years. Each new lake discovered expands the possibility that Antarctica is not barren but alive, thrumming with unseen ecosystems, sealed under ice like natural time capsules. Fringe accounts weave these findings into grander narratives. Some propose that beneath Antarctica's ice lies not only life, but remnants of advanced civilizations, their cities now entombed in lakes and valleys. The alignment of some supposed pyramid-shaped peaks with known lake systems is cited as evidence, though geologists dismiss such claims as pareidolia. Still, the allure of hidden worlds, whether microbial or monumental, refuses to fade. Scholars still debate whether the secrecy surrounding subglacial lakes is merely scientific caution or something more. Contamination is indeed a real concern. Even a single misplaced microbe from the surface could irreparably alter ecosystems sealed for eons. But the combination of real caution, limited access, and unexplained silences fuels speculation. In the end, the lakes beneath Antarctica embody the continent's paradox. They are at once natural wonders and symbols of secrecy, promising revelations about life's resilience, while also stoking suspicion of cover-ups. They remind us that Antarctica is not a frozen desert, but a layered labyrinth, a place where water and life may flow in darkness beneath our feet. And if such lakes can persist unseen for millions of years, what else might still lie hidden in the silent depths of the ice? The magnetic puzzle. While mountains and lakes concealed beneath ice are mysteries of geology and hydrology, Antarctica also hides a secret stitched into the invisible fabric of Earth itself, magnetism. For decades, pilots, surveyors, and scientists have reported anomalies in compass readings when flying over certain regions of the continent. Instruments behave erratically, sometimes drifting from true north, other times spinning without clear cause. The most famous of these disturbances lies in East Antarctica, around an area known as Wilkes Land. In 2006, NASA satellites mapping Earth's gravity field detected something startling beneath Wilkes Land, a massive, circular anomaly stretching more than 300 kilometers across. To geophysicists, this looked like the signature of an enormous mass buried deep below the ice, possibly the remnant of an ancient asteroid impact. If true, it could have been one of the largest impact events in Earth's history, perhaps even linked to the Permian-Triassic extinction 250 million years ago, when most of life on Earth perished. Mainstream researchers frame the Wilkes Land anomaly as a geophysical puzzle, either an impact structure or a feature related to mantle dynamics beneath the crust. But alternative thinkers see something stranger. The circular nature of the anomaly has fueled speculation of artificial origins, massive structures or bases concealed under the ice, shielded from view by kilometers of frozen cover. In the 20th century, military pilots sometimes reported radio interference and sudden instrument failures when passing over similar regions, adding fuel to these theories. Scholars still debate whether the Wilkes anomaly is indeed a buried crater, an unusual mantle plume, or simply an artifact of data processing. Yet its scale cannot be denied. If it is a crater, its size dwarfs even the famous Chicxulub impact in Mexico that attended the reign of the dinosaurs. Such an event would have reshaped global climate, oceans, and ecosystems. Reminders that Antarctica's history is not merely frozen stillness, but violent transformation. Elsewhere on the continent, smaller magnetic oddities emerge. Some regions exhibit magnetic signatures that don't align with expectations, as though the crust itself carries scars of lost tectonic events. For scientists, these anomalies are windows into Earth's deep structure. For storytellers and theorists, they are gateways to hidden chambers, buried machines, or even traces of a prehistoric civilization wiped clean by ice. The duality is striking. The same data, one group sees an asteroid impact, another sees evidence of a cover-up. And perhaps the fascination lies not in which interpretation is correct, but in how Antarctica invites such divergent visions. Its very inaccessibility ensures that certainty is rare, leaving space for speculation. What the magnetic puzzle shows us is that Antarctica is not passive. It influences the instruments we use to measure reality itself. Compasses waver, satellites detect anomalies, and scientists argue over their causes. Scholars still debate whether these distortions are mere quirks of geology or signs of forces yet to be understood. Either way, they remind us that beneath Antarctica's silence lies an Earth still alive, still restless, still capable of surprising us with secrets we are only beginning to uncover. The Nazi Antarctic myth. Among all the stories tied to Antarctica, few have captured the imagination quite like the claims surrounding Nazi expeditions. In 1938, Germany launched Neuschwabenland, a mission to survey Queen Maud Land. Officially, the team mapped territory, dropped swastika-marked flags, and scouted for potential whaling stations. But in the decades since, this seemingly routine venture has morphed into one of the most enduring myths of the 20th century. The mainstream record is straightforward. The expedition lasted just a few weeks, photographing about 600,000 square kilometers before returning to Germany. No permanent bases were built, and the effort had little long-term impact. Yet in the shadow of World War II, whispers grew that the Nazis had established secret outposts beneath the ice, perhaps using caves, geothermal vents, or even hollowed mountains to house advanced technology. One of the most persistent claims links these alleged Antarctic bases to wonder weapons, prototype aircraft and submarines supposedly far ahead of their time. The story goes that as the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, a faction of Nazi scientists and officers fled south, retreating to a hidden Antarctic stronghold. Fringe accounts insist they continued experiments in secret, even developing disc-shaped craft that some later equated with UFO sightings. Evidence for these claims remains elusive. Scholars still debate whether post-war reports of unusual aerial objects over Antarctica were misidentifications, atmospheric illusions, or something more. Operation Highjump, A massive US Navy expedition in 1946-47 is often drawn into this narrative. Officially, it was a training exercise and scientific mission. Yet, conspiracy theorists argue that the operation's scale, dozens of ships, thousands of men, aircraft carriers, revealed a hidden military objective to root out Nazi foe, arses entrenched under the ice. In reality, Operation Highjump encountered fierce weather, logistical failures and tragic losses, including aircraft accidents, but alternative interpretations linger. Some claim the expedition's abrupt end was evidence of a violent encounter with hidden powers, whether remnants of the Reich or something even stranger. Part of what keeps the Nazi Antarctic myth alive is Antarctica's very remoteness. Few people can visit the sites in question. Maps of Neuschwabenland show blank spaces. Archives contain scattered details, often in German, not widely circulated until after the war. In that void, imagination thrives. Scholars still debate whether the persistence of these tales says more about Antarctica or about us. The continent's hidden valleys and mountains make it an ideal stage for stories of escape and survival, and the allure of Nazi secrets, lost technology, hidden bases continues to resonate in popular culture, fueling books, films, and endless speculation online. What is undeniable is that the Neuschwabenland expedition was real, that Germany had ambitions in the frozen south, and that Antarctica became entangled in global power struggles during one of history's darkest chapters. Beyond that, we are left with shadows, a mix of fact and fable, stitched together by the icy silence of a land that keeps its secrets well. Whether mere myth or something more, the Nazi Antarctic legend demonstrates how Antarctica absorbs human anxieties and fantasies, becoming a canvas where history and imagination blur. And as with so many mysteries of the South, scholars still debate whether the truth lies buried beneath the ice, or in the stories we tell about it. Operation Highjump Revisited. When the US Navy launched Operation Highjump in August 1946, it was the largest Antarctic expedition in history. Commanded by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the operation involved over 4,000 personnel, 13 ships, and more than 30 aircraft. Officially, its purpose was straightforward: train military forces for polar conditions, establish the feasibility of bases in Antarctica, and conduct scientific surveys in the aftermath of World War II. Yet in the decades that followed, the mission became fertile ground for speculation, particularly when its sudden conclusion raised eyebrows. The fleet was expected to remain for 6 months. Instead, after just 8 weeks, the operation was cut short. The official explanation cited harsh weather, equipment breakdowns, and logistical challenges. Planes were lost to crashes on the icy surface, lives were claimed by accidents, and supplies dwindled faster than expected. For mainstream historians, these problems alone explain the premature withdrawal, but for conspiracy theorists, the abrupt end signalled something more. One oft-repeated claim is that Admiral Byrd himself made cryptic comments upon his return. In a newspaper interview in Chile, he allegedly warned that the United States must prepare for potential attacks from aircraft capable of travelling from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Scholars still debate whether Byrd's words were accurately quoted, mistranslated, or exaggerated by sensationalist reporting. Whatever the case, they became fuel for rumours that Operation Highjump encountered something unearthly. Alternative accounts weave the mission into the broader Nazi Antarctica myth. In this telling, US forces clashed with remnants of the Third Reich hidden beneath the ice, perhaps equipped with advanced flying craft. Others go further, suggesting that Byrd's high-speed aircraft referred not to Nazi prototypes but to unidentified flying objects, linking Operation Highjump to early UFO lore. Mainstream evidence does not support such claims, yet the gaps in documentation provide fertile ground. Large sections of official reports remain classified or heavily redacted. Scholars still debate whether this secrecy was routine, reflecting Cold War caution, or whether something genuinely extraordinary was withheld. Operation Highjump did succeed in mapping vast stretches of coastline, photographing thousands of square kilometres, and laying the groundwork for future scientific research. It also demonstrated the logistical nightmares of operating in Antarctica. But its legacy is twofold: one part sober science and military planning, another part legend, amplified by whispers of hidden confrontations. What makes Highjump unique in the Antarctic saga is how seamlessly fact and speculation intertwine. The sheer scale of the mission, the abrupt retreat, and Byrd's ambiguous remarks combined into a story larger than the operation itself. For some, it was a failed training mission. For others, it was a glimpse into a hidden war at the bottom of the world. And in Antarctica, where silence covers everything, unanswered questions echo louder. Was Operation Highjump simply an over-ambitious exercise cut short by cold reality? Or was it, as some still whisper, a fleeting confrontation with something humanity was not ready to face? Whispers of ancient civilizations, long before humans first set eyes on the frozen shores of Antarctica in 1820, stories circulated that the southernmost parts of the world might hold forgotten lands. The Greeks called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, and for centuries it remained only a shape on maps, imagined to balance the continents of the north. But in the 20th century, some began to suggest that Antarctica's icy expanse might have once hosted civilizations far older than our history books admit. Mainstream geology tells us Antarctica was not always cloaked in ice. Around 90 million years ago, during the Cretaceous, lush rainforests flourished there, nourished by a warmer climate. Fossilized ferns, petrified wood, and even dinosaur remains have been uncovered along its coasts, reminders that the frozen land we know was once green and teeming with life. Later, during the Pliocene epoch some 3 million years ago, evidence suggests that much of Antarctica was still partly ice-free. These facts provide fertile ground for more speculative claims. One of the most famous involves the Piri Reis map drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. Enthusiasts argue it depicts parts of Antarctica's coastline without ice, centuries before the continent's official discovery. Scholars still debate whether the resemblance is real or coincidental, with most historians suggesting the map was based on earlier charts of South America. Yet the idea persists that the map preserves knowledge of a once accessible Antarctica, perhaps visited by forgotten mariners. Other fringe theories go further, proposing that beneath the ice lie the ruins of a lost civilization, perhaps even Atlantis itself. Theorists point to satellite images of geometric patterns in the snow or unusual mountain ridges that resemble pyramids. These formations, geologists explain, are natural peaks known as nunataks, sharp ridges of rock poking through the ice. But imagination often transforms them into the silhouettes of ancient temples. In 2016, satellite photos of what appeared to be massive, man-made entrances cut into Antarctic mountains went viral online. Mainstream scientists dismissed them as shadows, natural caves, or distorted imagery. Still, for those attuned to the possibility of buried ruins, such images were tantalizing hints. Scholars still debate whether the human fascination with Antarctica as Atlantis is fueled by real anomalies or by our deep desire to place human history further back than textbooks allow. Archaeologically, there is no evidence of prehistoric civilizations in Antarctica. Its isolation, harsh climate, and shifting ice sheets make long-term settlement unlikely. Yet the continent's deep past is only partially known. With miles of ice concealing bedrock, there may be landscapes no human eye has seen in millions of years. Could valleys, riverbeds, or fossil-rich plains lie waiting beneath the cover of ice? The question lingers. What is certain is that Antarctica draws myth like a magnet. Its emptiness invites us to project stories of grandeur onto its surface. The ancient civilization theory may not hold in material terms, but it reflects something profound. The human need to imagine that we are part of a longer, more mysterious history than we yet know. And in that sense, Antarctica, silent and untouched, remains the perfect canvas for our most daring visions of the past. The UFO connection. By the mid-20th century, Antarctica had already become entangled in myths of lost civilizations and Nazi hideouts. But another layer of intrigue soon joined the mix: unidentified flying objects. In 1947, the same year as the Roswell incident, reports began surfacing that strange craft had been spotted near the southern ice. To some, it was coincidence. To others, it was evidence that Antarctica was not just a remote wilderness, but a hidden stage for otherworldly activity. Mainstream records do show curious anomalies. In 1965, the Argentine Navy reported seeing strange lights maneuvering over the Deception Island region. Witnesses described glowing orbs shifting direction rapidly, far beyond known aircraft capabilities. Similar reports came from Chilean and British bases in subsequent years. While skeptics chalked these up to optical illusions, atmospheric phenomena, or misidentified satellites, the persistence of the sightings gave them weight in the public imagination. Fringe theories connect these incidents back to Operation Highjump and Admiral Byrd's alleged remarks about aircraft capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds. If true, such words seem to describe not just advanced Nazi prototypes, but something entirely beyond human engineering. By the 1950s, pulp magazines and fringe researchers had woven Antarctica into the fabric of UFO lore, casting the frozen South as a possible hub for extraterrestrial visitors. One peculiar claim even suggests that beneath the thick ice, UFOs use geothermal vents as entry points into vast subterranean caverns. In this telling, Antarctica becomes a gateway to a hidden world, where alien bases coexist with ancient ruins. The idea may sound like science fiction, yet it continues to circulate in online forums, documentaries, and popular books. Mainstream science offers different explanations. Antarctica's extreme conditions create unique atmospheric displays, fata morgana mirages that stretch and distort distant objects, auroras that dance eerily across the sky, and temperature inversions that play tricks on perception. Add to this the isolation of research bases, long polar nights, and the psychological effects of confinement, and it's easy to see how ordinary lights might appear extraordinary. Still, scholars still debate whether some sightings can be dismissed so easily. The consistency of reports across nations, Argentina, Chile, Britain, raises questions. Were all of these simply misinterpretations, or was something genuinely unusual occurring above the southern ice? Even in modern times, Antarctica remains entangled in UFO culture. In 2018, online sleuths claimed to spot a crashed saucer in satellite images of the ice sheet, complete with a long skid mark suggesting an impact. Geologists explained it as a landslide or glacial movement, but the story went viral nonetheless. The mystery was not in the image itself, but in how quickly Antarctica once again became the canvas for imagination. What makes the UFO connection so enduring is Antarctica's silence. Remote, inaccessible, and shrouded in ice, it is a place where unknowns thrive. Whether the lights in the sky were reflections, advanced prototypes, or something beyond Earth, Antarctica gave them a stage where answers are hard to reach. And so the UFO connection lives on, part cold record, part warm myth, glowing faintly against the endless white horizon. Scientific secrecy and Cold War stakes. By the 1950s and 60s, Antarctica was no longer just a frozen frontier. It had become a geopolitical chessboard, where nations tested the limits of science, secrecy, and ambition. During the Cold War, The continent's isolation and strategic location made it an ideal backdrop for both collaboration and quiet competition. Officially, Antarctica was reserved for research and peace. Unofficially, its icy expanse concealed projects whose details rarely saw daylight. One undeniable milestone was the International Geophysical Year, 1957 to 1958. During this global scientific effort, 12 nations, including the United States and the Soviet Union, established permanent research stations across Antarctica. It was an unprecedented display of cooperation at the height of the Cold War. Bases like McMurdo Station and Vostok became centers for glaciology, astronomy, and atmospheric studies. Yet behind the science, whispers of military involvement lingered. Some argued that seismic surveys and radar scans were dual-use technologies, capable of mapping not only ice sheets but also potential resources or hidden structures. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 formally demilitarized the continent, banning nuclear tests and military bases. Yet the very need for such a treaty suggests that military interests had already been on the table. Scholars still debate whether the treaty was an act of pure idealism or a strategic compromise to prevent conflict over a landmass rich in untapped potential. The secrecy of the era only deepened suspicion. Much of the data collected during the geophysical year was never publicly released. Some scientists complained about missing archives, while others noted unusual restrictions on sharing information. Was it simply bureaucratic delay or deliberate suppression? For conspiracy-minded observers, the gaps hinted at discovery as too sensitive to disclose. Fringe theories flourished in this climate. Some claimed the Soviets had drilled at Vostok not only for ice cores but to access hidden caverns beneath the lake. Others suggested the US military continued covert operations long after the treaty, disguising them as scientific missions. Antarctica, once imagined as empty, had become a mirror reflecting Cold War anxieties, nuclear escalation, espionage, and the uneasy dance of superpowers. Mainstream history acknowledges that secrecy was indeed a Cold War hallmark. Projects like Project Iceworm in Greenland, where the US built hidden missile silos under the ice, show that the blending of science and military aims was not unusual. If such efforts occurred in the north, might similar ambitions have existed in the south? Scholars still debate whether Antarctica's remoteness made it impractical for such ventures, or whether that very remoteness made it ideal. Today, many Cold War-era documents remain classified or partially redacted. What we do know paints a picture of genuine scientific triumph. Ice cores reaching hundreds of thousands of years into Earth's climate past, radar revealing the vast subglacial lakes, and astronomy projects that peered at the heavens through the clear Antarctic skies. But layered atop this are the shadows of secrecy, data withheld, projects cloaked, and motives blurred. In Antarctica, where knowledge itself is difficult to obtain, the boundary between scientific caution and deliberate concealment becomes thin, and during the Cold War, when the world balanced on the edge of distrust, even the cleanest snow could not quite hide the footprints of secrecy. Modern expeditions and censored data. If the Cold War set the stage for secrecy, the 21st century has only deepened suspicions. Today, Antarctica is monitored by satellites, visited by research teams, and governed by international agreements. Yet even in our hyper-connected age, reports of restricted access and missing data continue to fuel speculation about what lies beneath the ice. Mainstream science has made extraordinary progress. Since the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar and ice-penetrating satellites have mapped much of Antarctica's subsurface, revealing mountains taller than the Alps and vast hidden lakes. One of the most remarkable discoveries is Lake Vostok, buried beneath 2.5 miles of ice and sealed off for at least 15 million years. When Russian scientists finally drilled into it in 2012, they reported strange microbial life adapted to extreme conditions. The samples, however, were limited, and further findings were slow to be released. For some, the delay looked less like scientific caution and more like deliberate suppression. Similar concerns arise with satellite imagery. Over the years, amateur researchers have claimed to spot anomalies on Google Earth: triangular pyramids, enormous circular depressions, or blurred patches that appear digitally scrubbed. While mapping errors and sensor distortions explain much of this, the idea of censored imagery has become a staple of Antarctica lore. After all, if companies edit out military bases or sensitive facilities elsewhere, why not in Antarctica? Expeditions have also sparked curiosity by what they don't reveal. In 2016, a British mission to explore Lake Ellsworth abruptly halted after technical difficulties. Millions of dollars and years of preparation ended in silence, with only partial data made public. Scholars still debate whether this was a simple case of engineering failure, or whether unexpected results forced discretion. Even government involvement has stoked intrigue. In 2018, then US Secretary of State John Kerry made a sudden and brief visit to Antarctica during a major diplomatic crisis elsewhere. Officially, it was tied to climate research. Unofficially, the timing raised eyebrows. Why fly halfway around the world to the most remote continent on Earth in the midst of urgent global events? Theories bloomed, from secret briefings to hidden discoveries beneath the ice. Fringe narratives often highlight the Antarctic Treaty itself as evidence of censorship. No other region on Earth has such strict restrictions against resource exploitation and permanent settlement. While scientists see this as a triumph of environmental protection, others argue it serves as a convenient legal cover to keep prying eyes away from sensitive zones. Scholars still debate whether the treaty's enduring unity reflects noble ideals, or an international agreement to keep certain truths buried. What is clear is that Antarctica remains a place where information moves slowly, if at all. Harsh logistics, high costs, and the dangers of drilling or exploring beneath the ice make every expedition a gamble. Some data is released years later, some never surfaces. In such gaps, mystery thrives. The modern age was supposed to banish myths with instant access and transparency, yet Antarctica, remote and hostile, resists that trend. It withholds its secrets in the same way its glaciers withhold ancient rivers, flowing unseen beneath the surface. And for every official report, there are whispers of what was left unsaid. Myths meet modern media. In an age where information is endless and attention is fleeting, Antarctica has found a second life, not as a scientific frontier alone, but as a stage for myth-making on a global scale. The frozen continent, long remote from human imagination, now appears regularly on YouTube channels, conspiracy forums, and glossy streaming documentaries. What was once whispered in Cold War backrooms is today broadcast in high definition with dramatic soundtracks and bold graphics. Mainstream science continues to feed this fascination. Every announcement, whether the discovery of microbial life in subglacial lakes or evidence of ancient rainforests buried beneath the ice, quickly spreads across headlines. Yet alongside the sober reporting, fringe narratives flourish. A radar image hinting at unusual geometric shapes becomes, in some corners of the internet, proof of pyramids older than Egypt. A blurred patch on a satellite map transforms into speculation about alien craft. In the hands of modern media, Antarctica's silences become louder than its facts. The internet age has democratized myth-making. In 2016, images of alleged Antarctic pyramids went viral, shared by millions who were less interested in geological explanations than in the thrill of mystery. TikTok clips and viral threads today compress decades of speculation into 30-second bursts of intrigue. It is less about truth, more about atmosphere, a sense that something monumental hides just out of reach. Mainstream history tells us that Antarctic exploration is slow, expensive, and often anticlimactic. A drilling mission might yield only muddy water or an inconclusive microbial sample. Yet, in modern media, these anticlimaxes are reframed as cover-ups, as though dullness itself were a mask concealing extraordinary truths. Scholars still debate whether this reflects a human need for wonder in a disenchanted world or a symptom of mistrust in institutions. The entertainment industry has seized upon Antarctica's aura of enigma. Films like The Thing and Whiteout imagine terror in the ice. Documentaries hint at hidden empires or extraterrestrial contacts. Even mainstream outlets sometimes lean into the mystery, knowing that a headline about pyramids in Antarctica will draw more clicks than unusual mountain formations. The continent has become a canvas onto which our anxieties and fantasies are projected. Curiously, the myth-making often folds real history into its fabric. Nazi bases, UFO sightings, Operation Highjump, all have kernels of truth, yet they are retold in ways that blur fact and fiction. Antarctica is one of the few places left where the boundary between scholarly research and speculative storytelling remains porous. In that sense, it functions like a modern mythology, an evolving narrative shaped as much by screens and algorithms as by ice and stone. The result is that Antarctica today lives in two parallel worlds. In the halls of research stations, scientists log data, drill cores, and analyze microbes. In the feeds of social media, the same continent becomes a land of ancient civilizations, alien gateways, and censored truths. Both images coexist, each feeding the other. Without the sober facts, the myths would lack anchors. Without the myths, the facts would reach far fewer people. And so, Antarctica stands not only as a geographic pole, but as a cultural one, magnetic to both science and story. It is here, in this blending of knowledge and imagination, that the myths of the ice continue to evolve, carried not by sled dogs or explorers, but by fibre optics and glowing screens. The enduring riddle of the ice. And so we arrive at the present, where Antarctica remains a paradox, both one of the most studied regions on Earth and one of the least understood. Its ice sheets record nearly 1 million years of climate history. Its hidden lakes harbour ecosystems untouched since before humans walked upright, and its bedrock conceals stories of ancient continents now shattered by time. Yet for all that science has revealed, much more remains buried beneath the miles of ice, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively. Mainstream fact tells us this: Antarctica holds about 70% of the planet's fresh water locked in ice. If it were to melt, global sea levels would rise by more than 60 meters, drowning many of the world's great coastal cities. It is, quite literally, the most important frozen vault in existence. And yet, in this age of climate crisis, it is also the most fragile. Scientists warn that parts of the West Antarctic ice sheet may already be in irreversible retreat. This is no myth. The real cover-up, some argue, is our collective inability to fully face the consequences of its loss. But alongside this urgent reality are the quieter riddles. Why do so many expeditions report technical failures when drilling into subglacial lakes? Why do certain satellite images appear blurred or missing? Why do governments fiercely maintain the Antarctic Treaty, even as they compete for resources everywhere else? Scholars still debate whether these are coincidences of logistics or signs that something deeper remains hidden from public view. Fringe tales continue to swirl, of course: pyramids, alien relics, Nazi strongholds. They may be unlikely, but they persist because Antarctica lends itself to imagination. Its remoteness creates a natural void, and human minds abhor a void. Where data ends, story begins. In that sense, Antarctica is not unlike the Digos. Ep-sea, or outer space, an edge of the known world, onto which we project both fears and hopes. Yet the enduring riddle of the ice is not just about secrets governments might keep or anomalies that appear in photographs. It is about what Antarctica forces us to confront in ourselves. The continent is a mirror reflecting human curiosity, ambition, and imagination. We come seeking knowledge, but also meaning. We seek proof of civilizations, aliens, or conspiracies, but in doing so, we reveal our deeper hunger for connection to the unknown. Perhaps, in the end, the greatest cover-up is not of alien bases or lost empires, but of how little we allow ourselves to marvel at the simple, staggering reality. An entire continent, twice the size of Australia, locked in silence, holding both our past and our future in its frozen hands. The ice keeps its secrets well. Whether they are mundane or extraordinary, scientific or mythical, one truth is certain: Antarctica is not finished with us. Its riddles endure, patiently waiting, beneath the unbroken white. Conclusion: Antarctica is, and perhaps always will be, a paradox. A land both charted and uncharted, both illuminated and shrouded in mystery. Across this journey we've seen how its story threads through history, from early explorers and ancient maps, to Nazi legends, Cold War secrecy, and modern whispers of censored data. Each layer of ice peels back not only fragments of Earth's past, but also reflections of our own imagination. Mainstream science gives us extraordinary truths: lakes sealed for millions of years, microbes that stretch the limits of life, and glaciers whose collapse could reshape civilization. Yet myths flourish in the gaps, where blurred images, abandoned expeditions, and sudden government visits spark stories of pyramids, UFOs, or lost worlds. Scholars still debate where the line lies between fact and fiction, but perhaps that debate is itself the essence of Antarctica's power. In the end, Antarctica reminds us that mystery is not the enemy of truth, but its companion. Beneath the ice may lie wonders still undiscovered, but above it lies a certainty: our fascination will never melt away.